1554, the Battle of Fleet Street. It was the culmination of the only serious armed revolt against Mary Tudor. A force of 4,000 rebels from Kent marched on London under the command of a man called Sir Thomas Wyatt in what became known as Wyatts Rebellion. The ascension to the throne of England by Mary Tudor the previous July had not been without contention. The daughter of Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, Mary was a committed Catholic in a country, thanks to her father, that had broken with Rome. Upon the death of her Protestant brother, Edward VI, there'd been actually an attempt to prevent Mary the Catholic succeeding by proclaiming a Protestant relative, Lady Jane Grey, as Queen. This coup failed to gain traction, and Lady Jane Grey was known as the 9 Days Queen, and she was now firmly incarcerated in the Tower of London, and Mary sat on the throne of England as a Catholic monarch. It seemed that sort of tradition and Mary's right to the throne were stronger in the general population than a desire to necessarily have a Protestant monarch. It should also be remembered that the break with Rome had only taken place 20 years before, and therefore there were many of her subjects who were still pretty lukewarm about this Protestant Reformation and sort of were quite happy with the old traditional religion, not least in the West Country. Mary was the daughter of her fiery father, and indeed a fiery mother as well, and determined mother, Catherine of Aragon. And she was a determined monarch who now believed that the tide was running with her. And so in January 1554, just 6 months after that aborted coup by Lady Jane Grey's supporters, Mary announced her engagement to King Philip of Spain. Now, those of her subjects who were twitchy about having a Catholic monarch now got really twitchy about her marrying the head of the world's Catholic superpower, and Spain at this time was conducting the Spanish Inquisition against heretics, as they saw them, non-Catholics, which aka England's Protestant population could be on the receiving end, and there was great fear amongst some of her Protestant subjects. So a plan was hatched to replace Mary with her half-sister, the Protestant Princess Elizabeth, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. And the figurehead of that rebellion would be Edward Courtenay, the Earl of Devon, who they incidentally planned should marry Princess Elizabeth when she became Queen Elizabeth on the throne. Courtenay's paternal grandmother was the younger sister of Elizabeth of York, who had married Henry VII. So Edward Courtenay actually had royal blood in his veins through the Plantagenets. Elizabeth of York, Henry VII's wife, was the daughter of King Edward IV. Three leaders emerged who were going to raise rebellions in 3 different parts of the country, thus sort of dividing the government's forces. The government wouldn't know which way to turn, which one would they deal with first, while the others could be flaring up. The Duke of Suffolk, father of Lady Jane Grey, would lead a rebellion in Leicestershire in the Midlands. Sir Peter Carew, who was a Member of Parliament for Devon, would lead the effort in the West Country. And Sir Thomas Wyatt, an experienced soldier, would lead the rising in Kent. As it was, the authorities got wind of the plot, and Edward Courtenay, Earl of Devon, was hauled into the Tower of London and questioned rather robustly. And Courtenay, whilst not directly involved in the operational planning of the rebellion, knew enough to enable the government to snuff out the rebellion in the Midlands and the West Country almost before it started. The Duke of Suffolk in the Midlands, he only gathered, his rebellion consisted of about 150 people, and when they marched on Coventry shut its city gates to them, and they were all arrested. And by the way, down in the West Country, Sir Peter Carew was trying to raise a rebellion against a Catholic monarch in an area that was still pretty pro-Catholic. So the chances of that ever really getting any sort of traction in that part of the kingdom are pretty debatable, which just left Kent. Sir Thomas Wyatt seized Rochester Castle on the 26th of January, and the revolt was on. The rebels now waited as a government force under the very loyal Duke of Norfolk, or loyal to Queen Mary, Duke of Norfolk, approached from nearby London. Just when it seemed that even this rebellion was about to be eliminated, about 500 of the government army defected to Wyatt. And the government commander, Norfolk, now it was his turn to retreat towards London, with Wyatt and a force of nearly 4,000 rebels on his heels. On the 3rd of February, Wyatt arrived on the south side of the River Thames, opposite the Tower of London, in what's now the borough of Southwark. Queen Mary, Mary Tudor, is often a footnote in English history. You know, she only reigned for 5 years, and in some respects, you know, she doesn't get studied very much, which is actually a shame, as much from a human angle as anything else. You know, it's her half-sister, Elizabeth, who's seen as the monarch of steel, defiantly opposing the Spanish Armada. And yet, in this moment, this challenge to Mary's reign, we see the same steel from Queen Mary I. This is a woman who had Tudor blood, not least Henry VIII's blood, in her veins. Just for good measure, she had that hot-headed Spanish blood too. She had defiantly opposed her father and refused to renounce her Catholic faith. I mean, she used to scream out of windows in the royal palace at her father. Just the year before, she had faced down a Protestant coup d'etat and had won. And, you know, you've got to remember, Mary was the first woman ever to be crowned Queen of England in her own right. This was a monarch who had no intention of going anywhere. Just 2 days before Wyatt had rocked up in Southwark, Mary had gathered the nobles and senior merchants of London in London's Guildhall. She had pronounced Wyatt a traitor and ordered them to raise men to support her. Over 20,000 men rallied to her cause in London. Wyatt's army was 4,000. London Bridge was disabled, denying Wyatt a crossing into the city, and was manned by thousands of loyalists to the Queen. The constable of the Tower of London actually threatened to fire his cannon on Southwark and set it ablaze if Wyatt didn't withdraw his men. The rebels were forced to head westwards to Kingston upon Thames before they could cross to the north side of the river. And all the while, you know, the reality of what they were doing and the lack of support they were getting and the very visible possible consequences were reducing his numbers as men drifted away. A day after crossing the Thames, Wyatt's rebels finally reached the outskirts, as it was at the time, of London. Now very much, you know, it's Kensington, so very much in London. After a very brief skirmish with government forces, which they sort of came off better at Hyde Park Corner, they advanced towards the city walls, the city of London itself. They advanced past Charing Cross, which is now sort of Trafalgar Square area. They up the narrow roads of the Strand and Fleet Street. And as they advanced, they weren't met by adulation, by, you know, the Protestant loyalist crowds, but sort of by bemusement and anger from the townsfolk. And it was suddenly dawning on Wyatt's army that this was a rebellion that wasn't popular. Finally, his ever-diminishing force arrived at one of the main gates into London. Remember, London at this time still had a city wall around it. And they arrived at the top of Fleet Street at the Lud Gate, which was shut to them, barricaded and fortified. And then from the houses around them in Fleet Street, they came under attack from forces loyal to Queen Mary. Retreating to a nearby tavern called the Bell Angel, Wyatt with just 60 men then fell back on nearby Temple Bar, where he surrendered to the government forces. Wyatt joined Edward Courtenay, Earl of Devon, in the Tower of London, along with Princess Elizabeth, who had also been hauled in. But try as they might, the authorities couldn't get Wyatt to implicate either Courtenay or Mary's half-sister in the plot. In April, Wyatt was given the traitor's execution of being hung, drawn and quarter. Mary, with that true Tudor fury, wanted to punish all those who'd been involved in the rebellion, all 4,000 of those Kentish men. But wiser counsel prevailed, and in the end, only 90 rebels were executed. Courtenay was sent into exile and died in Italy 2 years later. Princess Elizabeth was released from the Tower of London but placed under house arrest. Queen Mary did go on to marry King Philip, but just 4 years later, in 1558, she died and was succeeded by her half-sister, Princess Elizabeth I. Somewhat bizarrely, the biggest casualty of the Wyatt Rebellion, well, apart from Wyatt getting hung, drawn and quartered, was another prisoner in the Tower of London, Lady Jane Grey. Do you remember her? The woman who had attempted to oppose Queen Mary 6 months before. Whilst she wasn't the focus of the revolt, and whilst playing no role in it at all, Mary saw Lady Jane Grey as another potential person that future rebels could rally around, especially as her father, the Duke of Suffolk, had just tried to support this rebellion in the Midlands. And so on the 12th of February, 1554, Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, was executed. Well, I hope you enjoyed that forgotten story from English history. And if you did, then please give me a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can hear more of these stories as I release them. Thanks for your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon.